creators really help us because, they are storytelling in so many different ways and are innovative in ways that we aren't.
What does a creator bring that a traditional celebrity, athlete, or musician might not be able to bring? Like, what is the excitement here about creators?
The power of the fandom, the power of the super fan, the connection that creators can give and that create to their fan base, their segment of the consumer market, regardless of what category they're in, whether they're, barbecuing or name a creator category that exists, and the way that they're able to create that super fan connection is undeniably powerful, and we see it time and again. And then the scale attached to that now is phenomenal. Scale in so many different ways. Scale in terms of just blank metrics like number of views, but then you start to look at the engagement, the minutes. I mean, we know Bluey through the metrics that your business is able to provide us, and it's unbelievably staggering. I won't talk about our own company. I mean, the numbers are huge, but I think that's where the power and the value is really coming from. That these engagement numbers and the scale of viewership is undeniable.
Definitely there are creators that can bring scale and engagement, but I think there's also something to be said of scale doesn't necessarily bring engagement at the same time. And it's obviously a very saturated market. The creator economy has been going for a long time, and there are lots of different creators out there. We're very conscious of who we are choosing to champion, and it's not always people with scale. I think sometimes the most meaningful connections can be the ones without super scale, because where else is that sort of value exchange for us? We bring sort of scale and amazing storytelling. They bring that true, deep, authentic connection to a particular niche audience sometimes that we haven't tapped into. So I think that for me and sort of what we're doing is trying to figure out where that value exchange lies for us. And it might not be with the scalable ones.
Well, that's interesting because it sounds like you're arguing a little bit on sort of this point, but really it's because you have three different distinct businesses, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you built Moonbug is really built up on the creators and the creator IP as sort of like the core foundation, right? Then with Hello Sunshine, you have a celebrity-led brand that is looking to expand. And then with the BBC, you have brands that exist and that are institutionalized. And then you're bringing creators to provide a lot more meaningful engagement on that scale that already exists with your distribution. So I want to
and diverse communities. I think that's the point that you're getting to, which I think is a really powerful point.
I think you are so right in both of you in terms of we have very different businesses and we're tapping into creators for very many different reasons. And you're right in terms of BBC Studios has fantastic IP, is relevant, and that storytelling is at the heart of everything we do. But they're diverse communities and making sure that we are both global and local at the same time. Mm-hmm. That's where we see the power in creators. And I think for us, we really want to make sure that we are translating our storytelling not just to different platforms, but also to different communities. Bluey means something totally different in the US as to sort of what it means in India. So we've got to be really thoughtful about that. And creators really help us because they are storytelling in so many different ways and are innovative in ways that we aren't.
But also the metrics, like you're trying to also promote that IP. And so leveraging creators to get to those communities and really scale that promotion, I think is probably why you lean into them as well. They have that ability to, because they have that deep engagement, they can do those sort of lower funnel metrics where they have the trust of their audience. So if they recommend something because of the relatability, the vulnerability, all of those different things that they have that maybe a top celebrity can't, depends. You see a lot of celebrities now trying to build out their social channels and create social content in the model of what creators have done. But because they have that trust with those audiences and those diverse audiences, they're an incredible promotional tactic for those lower funnel metrics. Go buy this product, go see this movie, go watch this show. You believe them as a consumer and do that because you trust them.
I mean, that's absolutely right. And I think how do we work with them, I think is what I want to kind of dig into in the next few minutes, like respectively in your respective businesses. How do you actually work with creators so that these brand marketers and brands that are watching can understand maybe they can use this as a model to build out their own creator influencer programs themselves and build their businesses in the same way that you have with your entertainment businesses. So I think, why don't we start with you, Jasmine? Like, how do you actually work with influencers, and what purpose do they serve sort of in the greater strategy of BBC Studios?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we've learned a lot sort of over the last few years. And I think, yes, promotional tactics are definitely sort of the reason that we do lean in, but it's actually not the primary reason. We see them as brands in their own right, and we want to be able to use sort of the full ecosystem of BBC Studios to have that value exchange. We have consumer products, we do live events, and we want to make sure that we can lean in and go, you are fantastic, we want to champion you, and we have the ability to have a partnership. I think the key learning for us is around actually not sort of briefing the life out of them. It is going, they know how to tell a story.
Briefing the life out of them?
I
think that's a very good point. I just wanted to reiterate that.
And it should be an open conversation.
That's very trusting, right?
You have to be able to trust them, I think, because otherwise why would you go to them?
But you have to vet them to trust them. You have to work with them to
It's
trust
a conscious
them.
decision.
Yeah.
It has to be a conscious decision. You have to be able to go, yes, we are a true fan of yours. We think you're talent, and we trust you to be able to partner with a story of ours.
Yeah, I mean, like some of these brands are brand new, and some of these, some of these are celebrities that are very established, and then some of these are, decades, centuries old institutions, And I think like brands are wary to put so much trust into a creator because one bad post, we've seen what happened this past year with some brands that, really had a tough time. Their bottom line was severely affected. I'm talking particularly about Bud Light and Viv. And, that's sort of part of the game you have to play, but how do you safely work with creators, but also get the most out of them?
Well, and I think the Bud Light example is an interesting one just because the execution of that was well done, meaning that was a creator that did do good work. Like that wasn't a creator that was untrustworthy.
Yeah, she didn't go off the rails or off brand at all,
She did a well done piece of content. It was the fact that it was not right for the brand's audience, obviously, and you saw that come to play. But I think that's a really unique example where the work was good, the creator did a good job, but it didn't make sense for the brand's audience. And that comes back to the brand making the right decisions, understanding their mission, their consumer, their purpose, and then choosing the right creator. So that's one hurdle. But then the other hurdle to what I think you're getting at is how do you choose creators and have that trust to ensure that you don't have a situation where it's Samsung partnering with someone who then a day later posts from their iPhone. And that comes back to the vetting process, making sure that you are developing a deep relationship with that creator so you can have those conversations and ensure that they are delivering on the brief, even if you're not trying to brief the life out of them.
We find we work with lots and lots of different creators on the advertising side when we're collaborating on new product lines or new content. We want the world to be excited about our new parents and new families, etc. And so it is really challenging. And I think one of the exciting things for brands is that the platforms now allow brands to have adjacency to really brilliant creators. And what's even better is that the creators then benefit financially from having that adjacency to their content. So I think for brands, thinking about that aspect of, being in proximity to and attached to a really brilliant creator and that creator's fan base, just in the media moment, is actually quite powerful. And then even going a step further is like, well, how can you then, in a more scalable way, think about bringing that influencer, that creator, into more of your media spot, and then scaling that out through a media buy, because it does become challenging. It does become challenging, but I think you have to acknowledge the accountability. I think, when you reference the Bud Light example, I completely agree with you. Executionally, I don't think there was, a flaw there. I do feel that the accountability of making sure that as a sort of brand, when you make a conscious decision for that value exchange, for that brand adjacency, you need to stick with that creator and make sure that, if there is going to be backlash, you made that
that decision too.
Especially
And therefore
because
you
it
step
was
in.
executionally done well.
Exactly. I completely agree. And I think there is some onus on us as media publishers, as brands, and also on the advertisers to make sure that you see it all the way through. Otherwise, it does become inauthentic, that you have just essentially completely misused that value exchange. And I think there is definite other examples of that where it's gone wrong.
I think the bigger mistake would then be to retreat and go into sort of your old, trusted, methods. Like, that's it. We're just doing newspaper ads going forward, right? I mean, those days are looking like they're seeing their end. Consumers are moving more and more towards digital platforms, and they're trusting voices that they're familiar with. And there's the sort of the cult of personality is stronger than ever in terms of influencing decision makings by consumers. And I think so. I think that's right. And supporting those creative voices and allowing them to, have that honest creative expression. I think that's the bit that's really exciting about this space, is that every day, I'm sure all of us experience this. You stumble upon, something new, something brilliant, something, that's surprising and delightful. And I think how finding ways for brands to really scale that is and there will be solutions, and there are starting to be, and it'll either come from the platforms or businesses like ours and activities that we're trying to do. But I think being able to recognize and acknowledge those brilliant new creative voices and find a way to bring them into your world and do that in a way that is scalable. I mean, that's going to be the.
But do your due diligence.
Yeah.
I mean, look at their content.
Yeah.
I work with somebody who does know how.
Do you think people aren't?
Yes, I 100% think people aren't, and then they're shocked when somebody does something that's really on brand for their channel.
Because it's really not about numbers, and that goes back to the point that you were making. It's more about what is actually resonating and what's the point. Like, the scale is part of it, but also the material itself. I mean, the content in of itself is really important. I want to ask you a little bit about how Moonbug builds its business, right, around these creators that like Cocomelon. Like, how do you build your business? And I do want you to touch upon how much media is a part of that sort of pie chart in terms of the business that you're building around your celebrity channels. Really, is what they are.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so we acquire all of the brands that sit in the Moonbug portfolio, are all unbelievably successful creator-first brands, IP, characters, worlds in their own right. And so that was our model, was to, having come out of Disney, out of traditional media, to see that the traditional approach to developing, testing, producing, and then distributing entertainment, it's getting faster, but it's still long.
But do you have products that are branded, or are you still doing brand partnerships? Like, how does that work in terms of
Both.
It's both. So so one of the things that we look at when we make acquisitions is, how can we diversify and broaden that individual property? So Cocomelon was one YouTube channel when we acquired Cocomelon, a really successful YouTube channel. But now it's it's Netflix, and it's 300 consumer products partners in any given category, a huge music library, and music recording artists in and of its own right. So diversifying those commercial revenue streams, by the way, is something that creators should all be looking at. How can they think about shelf space on YouTube, affiliate partnerships with other retailers and things like that. There are
Social e-commerce is such an opportunity for them, and I think sort of thinking about themselves as brands in their own right is absolutely where they need to go. I completely agree.
Well, and media companies. So the Home Edit was an acquisition by Hello Sunshine. They started Joanna and Clea created a home organizing business, essentially. They actually created the model for it. And they started with about 50,000 followers on Instagram, which is when Reese discovered them. And they built that. They created a YouTube series that was a brand partnership, which then turned into their first show with Netflix as they continued to grow their social following, which is now 9 million over plus. And they have book deals. They're coming out with 2 more books. They have multiple New York Times bestsellers, but now they're coming out with 2 more as they diversify their storytelling in September. They had a podcast. They have a new show with ABC. They've got a huge deal with Walmart where they've created products and with the Container Store and Walmart. So you really see them as a creator-led business that's turned into a media company across its own flywheel.
So it's not really marketing anymore. It's almost like market entrepreneurship, right?
brand building.
And I feel like can brands learn from what you're doing with your entertainment brands that they can do with consumer brands or any other type of marketer that wants to work with a creator or influencer or work not just with you, but also sort of be inspired by how you're doing to integrate in that way. Because that to me sounds like the way of the future.
They have to really know who they are. What do they stand for?
What's their consumer
purpose?
want?
And then, as creators have shown, you can manifest that truth about your individuality, and brands should have that individuality. They should stand for something. They should be able to connect and then back that up through storytelling. And I think many brands, a lot of brands that we speak to, are on that journey. But it's a commitment because the ROI and the metrics are non-traditional. They're not standard. You can't look at it on a click or a consumer pathway to purchase that you struggle to get today anyway with any advertising spend or have done forever. So I think that's part of the challenge. But I'm the conversations that I have with brands is that they are absolutely on this journey for sure.
Yeah, it feels like creators are part of your DNA, maybe more so on this side of the spectrum than with BBC, but they're very much part of the brand in of itself, right? Not just brand ambassadors or not just people doing brand deals, but really kind of part of the presentation of who you are.
I think it's changing our businesses. Our businesses, and maybe
Scaling them.
Yeah, Jasmine, you were about to say
something. that looking at the creator sort of landscape has helped the BBC to sort of like?
I think that what we stand for is fantastic storytelling, and I think it's the acknowledgement as to the BBC Studios and the BBC Group is fantastic at storytelling, but there are new storytellers, and we want to champion and make sure that we are being as inclusive as possible to showcase all of those stories. So I think yes. Absolutely, sort of creators are sort of where sort of Moonbug sort of originated. I think it has transformed the way we look at sort of how we grow and how we scale. Absolutely, you made that point.
Distribute content as well.
Exactly, sure. and I think it's sort of what is a story has really changed. It is not sort of something that is done in an 8-part series just on linear. It can be on any platform, and a story is very different on TikTok to what it is on YouTube versus on sort of how you're going to engage them and get them through all of the noise that is out there.
It's also a really strategic play to lean into representative storytelling.
Yeah.
Which, in order to empower the next generation, they need to see themselves represented. And so I think creators have done a great job of charging forward and creating those paths. And so I think you're seeing these more traditional media companies understanding that they need to evolve and tell those stories, appreciating those stories and giving them a platform for scaling.
I completely agree. And I so admire the collective because you have taken the values of everything and it's all the way through. Championing women and sort of those emerging creators is so fantastic.
I think there's one really interesting aspect that comes with this though, which is it's now a two-way dialogue. So the audience are also going to tell you exactly what they think of you and what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you've got to be prepared to deal with that.
Which is good for brands. I think that helps them understand their consumer better. And, to your point before, it's what is the right storytelling for the brand? And I think, looking at those different mediums, it's creators, but also does your brand, as a brand, does your community really want to get together IRL? We saw that as Hello Sunshine.
Oh, yeah.
And we created an experiential franchise called Shine Away because our community was asking for it. It's not an easy thing to develop a huge experiential franchise, but they wanted the ability to get together, celebrate their fandom IRL, get closer to the authors, get closer to each other in celebrating this. And so we did that because our audience was demanding it. But I think that's what brands need to look at. What are the right forms of storytelling? Should it be leaning into TikTok? Should it be doing something experientially? Should it be publishing? Where's your consumer? How are they consuming things?
And sort of where is that audience, I think is a really important question, but also how you're preparing for both positive progress, which is fantastic in terms of they want to meet up in real life, but also I think you're completely right in terms of preparing as to if it does go sour, and making sure that you have not only prepared sort of the talent and the creator, but also prepared your teams. There's sort of there are three parties in this, right? There is the publisher, there is the talent, and there is the advertiser, and it might not always be three. But you've got to be thoughtful about all of those sort of what everyone's bringing to the table and how you manage expectations. There is going to be risk if you're doing something innovative, and we don't want to stifle that sort of innovation by being unwilling to accept the risk.
And taking the learnings.
Yes.
Not everything's going to go perfectly all the time.
No, nor should it.
Yeah. And so being able to say, okay, that was a mistake or that could have gone better. These are the learnings and this is how we're going to implement them in the future. Having that transparency and that vulnerability, I think really, really benefits brands. It's benefited ours.